Hello everyone, welcome. Today I would like to talk about to be in the world but not of the world. Christ in the Gospel of John talked about when he was praying to the Father, he was talking about those who the Father had given him, and he said, they're not of this world, even as I am not of this world. Well, to be in the world, but not of the world. That's the way you have to become. And what has happened, what happens to people, is that they become of the world. In other words, there are two ways of experiencing everything. One way is a way where you go through experience, but experience doesn't go through you. Okay? You go through the experience, but the experience doesn't go through you. That's the way we ought to experience life. It's something like when you were a little child. When you were a very little child, you were in the world, but not of the world. You saw things, you observed things, you heard things. But things didn't impinge on you. They didn't penetrate you. They didn't corrupt you. They didn't change you. But then it began to happen, which I'll go into later. But for now, I just want to say that there's a way of being in the world, but not of the world. Now, what you need is a little mental distance. But what do we do? What has happened to us? Let's put it that way. What has happened to us? You have fallen to the other way of experiencing everything. And that other way of experiencing everything is traumatic. You experience words, people, food, events, everything. You experience it in such a way that it penetrates. It leaves a memory. It leaves an imprint. It changes you. It corrupts you. It shocks you. It traumatizes you. It emotionalizes you. Now, to the average person will say, yeah, that's right. That's the way things are. I get excited at this, and I get angry at that, and this thing bothers me, and this thing upsets me, and that thing shocked me, and this person made me angry, and see? This thing excites me, and this thing gives me pleasure, and see? But it's a process of becoming corrupted. So, maybe I can describe to you something that you may have experienced in your life, and that is where there was danger, for example. And all of a sudden, it was as if you were watching a movie, as if it wasn't even happening to you, as if it were happening to someone else. You watched the moment pass, and then you were safe. Somehow you were safe. There was a distance between you and that experience in such a way that you observed it, and it passed, and it didn't impinge upon you. Okay? Well, that is what I'm talking about. There's a way of being in the world, but not of the world, where you go through experience, but experience doesn't go through you. And you need to find that. You need to find it. Okay? You had a little bit of it when you were a little tiny child. Then you lost it. How did you lose it? Well, because you undoubtedly came from a home with imperfect parents. Parents who themselves had been penetrated and traumatized and corrupted. See, by the craziness of the world, by their angry parents, their unloving parents, their resentful parents, their pressuring parents, and everything else. And so it wasn't long before they emotionalized you. See, or terrorized you by punishing you and yelling at you and threatening you and making all kinds of dire predictions of awful things that would happen if you didn't behave, and see, and then you cried, see, in terror. And then you reached out for love, see, and you reached out to the very ones who had terrorized you. Then they offered their phony love, their consoling love. In whatever way it came. They felt guilty, so they gave you things, they gave you money, they left you alone, they gave you an iPhone. See, they hugged you, they felt sorry for you. See, first they terrorized you, made you upset, scared you. See, and then they offered their consoling love. You see how that, you see what that does to the child? Then, of course, they put, then because of their lack of understanding, their lack of wisdom, they did unto you what was done to them. But don't hate them. See, that's another trauma. In fact, that's one of the biggest traumas in your life, is resenting other people for their acts of commission or omission. Now you must see that resentment only creates trauma or intensifies the trauma or sustains the trauma. If you can let go of resentment, then there's no more trauma. And the traumas that you had, when you see the resentment and let go of it, then they begin to dissolve. See, so have you been able to follow me so far? So then, in their lack of understanding, and they were misguided. See, they were misguided themselves. So they put you in an awful daycare or an awful school with an awful babysitter, somebody else's home where something happened. See, and then there were the schoolyard bullies and academic pressure and grade pressure and drug pressure and all of it. You know the whole story. You can fill in the details. That we all have our own personal experiences, okay? And so you just fill in the details. Then years later, you discovered that two things. Number one, you had fallen away from something that you had when you were a little child. When you were a little child, you knew in your heart what was right. And you loved certain values, real values. You loved them. And you believed in them. But then years later, you didn't believe in them anymore. They were just words, just abstractions. See? And you had a lot of anger and a lot of hate, and that's the corruption. See? The evidence of the corruption. The evidence of the corruption is, one of the evidences is anger, resentment, hostility, rage, unfinished business, you see. So then you have been turned around. Now you were externalized. And you fell outside of the protective boundaries of your intuition and your conscience and your calm center of being. See, if you had remained close to intuition, if you had not been penetrated and traumatized and corrupted, then you would have grown like a beautiful flower. To be a Madame Curie or a Mozart or a Beethoven or an Albert Einstein or a Susan B. Anthony or a George Washington, or, see, Michelangelo. But instead, or a Paul, see, a David, an Isaiah, a Ruth. But instead you fell away from your ground of being. So what you need now is, so now remember what I said. There are two ways of experiencing everything. One way where it doesn't penetrate. See? Another way where it penetrates and changes you and traumatizes you and corrupts you. So what you need is mental distance. You have to find that little bit of mental distance. And the meditation that I have is helpful in that regard. See, if you practice it, and you have the right attitude, meaning that you want to know the truth. You're willing to see you're willing to see the truth about things. And you're willing to give up your resentments. See? Because of what was done to you, whatever it was, the false love of the world, the cruelty and the false love. See? It's like the good guy, bad guy routine that you see in the detective movies, the police shows on TV, where the one cop comes in and he's the bad guy and he gives the suspect a hard time. Then he leaves and then the other one comes in and he's a good guy. Hey, would you like a cigarette? Hey, I'll bring you, would you like a soda? Hey, the other guy, he's got issues. He's on a mission. Don't worry about him. Hey, why don't you and I'll be your friend. See, good guy, bad guy. So that's what was done to you. Good guy, bad guy. How do you get mental distance? So it's a protected state. That's what it is. It's a protected state. Call it grace. So what keeps you in the protected state? Well, first of all, you need that little bit of mental distance. Okay? So you can observe things without reacting. See? So words don't affect you so much anymore. Maybe I can offer that as a good example. Have you noticed how words are nothing but what? Vibrations in the air, or little pixels on a screen, or little ink shapes on a page. That's all they are. But the words from people can upset you, can anger you, can enrage you, can hurt you. See? Have you ever wondered how can words, which are nothing, how can they upset you so much? See? Or people's lies, when they tell you how wonderful you are and how great you are, which you're not. See? They lift you up. And then other words bring you down. But especially the words of criticism upset you. Have you ever noticed? No, why is that? They shouldn't. See? Words should go in one ear and out the other. You hear the words, okay? But that's all. You just hear the words and you don't react. See? No emotion. That's the way it ought to be. And then if something meaningful is said, then in being close to intuition, close to the inner light, if there's something meaningful said, then you'll take note of it, what's meaningful. If nothing meaningful is said, then it goes in one ear and out the other, doesn't even bother you. See? So that's how it has to be. You bump into a chair and your knee hurts. You get a bruise and it hurts. Well, then you see that your knee hurts, that you got a bruise. You see that, but you don't get angry. You don't get upset. You don't feel sorry. You don't get angry at the chair that you bumped into. See? Some little thing happens. There's a delay. There's traffic. So you're sitting in traffic. You just see that you're sitting in traffic. You don't get upset by it. See? That's the way you should go through life. Remember you probably don't. A long time ago, even I hardly remember it, but there was a cartoon. It was called Mr. Magoo. And Mr. Magoo, everywhere he went, he didn't know what was happening to him. And somehow he just went through life without anything happening to him. It's just amazing. Or how about Bugs Bunny? He didn't get upset. Remember, Yosemite Sam was always upset. Daffy Duck was upset. See? And they usually end up defeating their own purpose, weren't they? They were their own worst enemy. Yosemite Sam and Daffy Duck and Elmer Fudd were always getting upset. Bugs Bunny was cool, calm, collected. Didn't get upset at all. He just chomped on his carrot. That's the way you have to learn to be. See? Then you will see, if you could be that way, can you see how you would be more reasonable? You'd be able to make better decisions and judgments. You'd be something solid for your kids and your partner, instead of being upset. And just think of the tension, headaches, and nervousness, and tense and backaches, and all the things that you wouldn't have if you didn't get upset. Well, the first thing you need is the little bit of mental distance. That's the beginning. See, the protected state, you call it grace, it's much more than that. It's much more than that. It leads to everything. Because you're close to your own lodestar, close to your inner ground of good from God. And so what is it that protects this state? And when you're in this state, there's like a force field around you. That the bad can't get in. And only the good comes out. Only good comes in or out. Basically, only good comes out. No bad gets in. See, it's like a force field. Like on Star Trek, when they were being attacked, they put up the force field to protect them. That's what it is. It's protective. It's a shield, and then you have to stay in that for always. But now, I just want to give you a couple of little hints. So remember in the Garden of Eden, the knowledge of good and evil. See, what is knowledge? But in the biblical sense, it means to be intimate with, like when Adam knew Eve, to be intimate. Okay? So, now can you see how, if something happens, you just see that it happened, that's all. You see the difference between that and knowing, being intimate with the experience in order to have feelings, see, in order to feel excited or angry or judgmental or hurt. See, those sport your ego, don't they? This false ego life. You see, sampling experience to get feelings. See? To get experience, sampling it. So what you're doing is you're crossing a metaphysical line. You're crossing an invisible metaphysical line. Okay? And when you do, you're in uncharted territory. And then you become subject to what's there. Okay? You're much better to remain safe. And so what protects this state where no bad can get in? What protects it? Well, first of all, the meditation. Every day, first thing in the morning, recommitting to having God in your life and to wanting to know the truth. And to being patient with others, okay? Can you see how when you're impatient with someone else, see, can you see how you're stepping over a line? And it's a forbidden experience because you want to sample hate. You want to sample impatience. You want to sample judgment. See? See? There's no love there. You sample it, but you're stepping over a line. So what protects this wonderful state of grace, this blithe, carefree state of being, something like what you had when you were a little child? Well, you can have it again, but back then you were only a little child with a fallen nature, so you were vulnerable. And then you came from an imperfect home with imperfect parents and imperfect people, and so it was, it was going to happen that you would be upset and traumatized and emotionalized and all of that. Okay, so it happened, all right. But now, you're an adult. Now, you can willingly, because you want to know the truth, see? And you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you don't want to resent people anymore. You can yearn for what you once had when you were a little child. Okay? Something good, something pure, something innocent, to retouch again what you knew in your heart was right, see? And then now, see, it can happen. So the meditation, first of all, is to help you to have a little bit of detachment. So you go out in the world and you're not so close. So you're not shocked and excited and upset by things. See, now you sample things unwittingly. You don't want to go out and get upset. You don't want to get shocked. You don't want to get nervous, a headache and tension, and you don't want to have become angry. But it happens to you anyway because you've lost control of yourself, see? Now you must get recentered and then have some calmness, have a little bit of detachment, okay? And go through the world, go through the day without the day going through you, okay? So that's one thing. Now what else protects it? Well, patience. Not resenting other people. That protects the this meditative state, this carefree, blithe state of grace, okay, of being in the world but not of the world, of no longer being shocked and traumatized, see, and impinged upon and penetrated and changed. So, not resenting other people, see, protects it. Faith protects it, you see. Clinging to what you know in your heart is right. See, clinging to what you know in your heart is right, and being willing to see through with it. Okay, so you know you mustn't hate people, so then don't resent others. You know that you mustn't. What's a good example? That you mustn't. I can't think of a good example. Cheat someone or talk behind their back. You just see that you shouldn't do that. See? And so you don't. See? Because you know what's in your right. Now you have faith. You've seen what happens when you fall away from faith, when you fall away from real values, when you fall out beyond the protective state. You've seen what happens to you. See? You've seen the horror of it, the hell of it. Well, that's what happens to others. That's what happened to your parents, so don't hate them. That's what happened to them. But now that you've seen that, see, that God permits us to experience a little bit of this hell out there so that we scurry back to Him. Okay? Now, some people like it. That's for them, but not for you. Okay? So you scurry back to your lodestar, okay, and to the Father. So you see how patience, not resenting other people, trusting in what you know in your heart, having faith in your intuition, what you see, trusting what you see for yourself, what's given to you to see. See, instead of listening to everyone else, following everyone else, now just see, stand back and observe, see, and see what you see, okay? And you'll realize things and understand things, okay? So and so you can stay in this state, this meditative state of grace,